Hi everybody, and a very warm welcome again from myself, and many thanks for joining us for one of our regular, these are becoming regular, that's for sure, our Friday afternoon live. So yeah, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're watching us from. Wherever you're watching us from, I hope you're getting slightly better weather than we are here in the UK at the minute. We've been battered by storms today. It's actually just starting to calm down here, but I did fear at one point this morning we weren't going to have a roof on the studio. It was really that bad, but should be okay now. If you can excuse me 1 second, somebody's knocking my door. Just bear with me 1 second. Sorry, I'm on a live webinar. That's all right. Oh, sorry about that. Some medication for me mum, so I had to take that. So, right, I'm back with you, and I'm back with you to stay for the rest of the afternoon. I shan't be tripping off again. Yeah, it's lovely to see so many of you on. Got quite a few things to get through today. The first thing is a bit of good news, really. If you are a Pa5x owner, there is an update which is imminent. This week, I think currently as we speak, it's still going on. There is the big music festival in Nam over in the States, in the Los Angeles area. And the good news is that they have previewed a update which is coming. And there's two things. I don't know the full contents yet, but there are two things in particular that I personally have been waiting for a long time. The first one is the return of Easy Record. Now, if any of you have ever seen the webinars with Andy when he does sequencing, he tends to, let's call it, cheat a little bit by laying down initially the style. So he creates a drum part, bass parts, and 5 or 6 other parts just by using the style, and then he goes in and edits it afterwards, and then he starts to overlay the additional tracks. And that is brilliant, because for most people at home, it's the best way to get into sequencing is to use the style and then start layering on top of that. In their infinite wisdom, they took it off the Pa5x, but finally, after much gentle persuasion from people all around the world, that is coming back. And the other thing which is making a reappearance that was on the 4x and was taken off the 5x is the MIDI file to style converter, which a lot of people liked because you could pop a MIDI file onto a USB stick and it would have a good go at creating a style. Things like that, it's AI basically entering our little world. It's good. It's never going to be perfect until we see whether they've made any improvements from the 4x. It's difficult to comment, but the good news is it's on its way. What else will be on the update? I don't know, but as soon as I have further details, I will, of course, let everybody know. Now, we've had a few questions. We're going to show you this little bit of software. I promised we'd show you this software called Songbook Plus. But before we get there, we've had a few questions in from people, which is always nice because it gives me some sort of material to actually do instead of using the grey matter all the time to think of things. And the first one actually was something that we covered on Genos last week. If any of you watched that, we showed you how to create an additional split on the right hand. Let's put the overhead camera on. So we showed you how to split this section up into 2. Well, somebody wrote in and said, I'm not sure how you do that on the 5x. So look, I'm going to keep this relatively brief, but I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone here because I'm going to show you something else that we can do with the same feature. And if we press the menu button, this is all found in a little tile up in the top right-hand corner called Keyboard Ensemble. Now, most of us know that Ensemble, which is a button here, is where we find the right-hand block chording. So you play your left hand and it automatically puts duets, trios, 4-note harmonies, etc. on the right hand. And I think with that in mind, most people have probably ignored this bit that says Keyboard Ensemble because they think that's all it actually features. But actually, if you go into this, we have 4 different tabs down the right-hand side. And depending which tab you're on, you can do different things. Let's just go through them stage by stage. The first one says joystick and pedal. Now, what does that mean? Well, depends what pedals you've got connected. What I've got connected this afternoon is I've got a damper or sustain pedal, whichever you want to call it. I've also got an expression pedal or a volume pedal. So as we push the volume pedal down, it gets louder as we bring it back, just like you used to get on a 2-manual organ. The joystick is referring to the little joystick over on the left-hand side here, which we use for bending notes and etc. etc. We'll show you some different functions in a second. Now, at the moment, look, we've got tick boxes in the screen. So at the moment, it's telling me that upper one, yes, it's going to be affected by the expression pedal, joystick Y and joystick X. Now, Y is up and down, X is side to side, basically, and it's affected by the damper. Now, you can switch these sections on and off simply by unticking the boxes. And I should say at this point, and this is important, when you save a setting, either as a keyboard set library or a songbook entry, it will remember these individual settings for that particular registration that you're saving. So this is brilliant. Now let me give you some idea as to why you might want to alter the settings, and I'm just going to do this on the fly today rather than have everything pre-prepared. In upper one, I'm just going to choose the Italian Grand Piano. So that's fine. I'm going to take all the splits off for a second. So here we go. Where are we? There we go. Why have I got nothing? There we go. That's better. My fault. Oh, that's why. It's because I've switched the pedal off, haven't I, while I was talking to you. There we go. So do that. Okay, so let's put that back. What have I done? Tell me what I've done. I know exactly what I've done. I've picked a setting where I've got on monophonic. That's better. That's better. Just to let you know what the confusion was there, I'd chosen a sound section that was set to monophonic. So me trying to play block chords, it was actually blocking it out altogether. So in upper one, I've got my piano. In upper two, I'm going to put a string sound. Now, that's fine. I've got piano and strings. Now, to all intents and purposes, that might seem fine. There is a problem. There's an underlying problem here. The piano, that is a naturally decaying sound. So when we use a sustain pedal, although it makes it linger, it will ultimately disappear. When you use a sustain pedal with a non-decaying sound, and that means a sound that if you held the keys, it would just stay on forever and a day. If I put the sustain pedal on, Look what happens when I take my hands off. It acts as note hold. Now, when you are using the two sections together, if you're a little bit heavy-footed on the sustain pedal or the damper, and you keep it on the bulk of the time, it won't be a problem with the piano, but all your string sounds will start to blend into each other in not a particularly pleasant way. Look. The strings have got no definition to them because they're all just blending into each other. So this is where, if we go into our keyboard ensemble, I can untick the damper box for the strings. Now look what happens. If I use the damper, when I take my hand off, the piano will continue to linger, but actually the strings cut off. So I get a much better defined string sound. There we go. So there are times when you don't want the damper to affect all of the sections. So let's go back into our keyboard ensemble. Why would we want to take the joystick setting off? Well, let me go, if I may, just for a second, to an organ sound. So I'm just going to go into one of the organs. Now, by default, Korg set the slow and fast tremolo to be triggered by just flicking the joystick up. In other words, we're using the Y position. If it was also ticked for the X position and you accidentally veer off to one side, look what happens. You might change from slow to fast tremolo, but you get this irritating sort of pitch bend, which you certainly don't want on an organ sound. But it's ever so easy to, particularly when you're coming at it from an angle, that's fine. But if I just caught it slightly off centre, it doesn't sound good at all. So what I would do when I'm using or setting up an organ sound, I would go in and disable the X setting. That's the side to side. Now it doesn't matter where I fling that joystick from side to side. All I'm going to get is my change from slow to fast tremolo there. So there are times, not all the time, but there are times when it's really important to be able to go in and disable some of these sections. So finally, let's just look at expression. Volume pedal, expression pedal, whatever you want to call it, I think is a vital piece of equipment when you're playing an arranger keyboard, because it is how you get good light and shade, you know, to have the quiet passages in the music, etc., etc. But let's again, let's just set something up on the fly again here. Let's go to strings there, and I'm gonna put, just as an example, I'm gonna put a choir sound. There we go. I'll put lyrical choir, and that's fine. I've got both sounds on. Obviously, you can balance those two sounds with your volume controls here. That's better. I brought the choir up in volume. Now, let's go into our menu and keyboard ensemble again. What would happen if I said, okay, I don't want the strings affected by the volume pedal? Now, what happens here? If you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm pulling the volume pedal right back off now. So I've only got strings, and they're at the normal volume because they're not being affected by that volume pedal. The choir, however, is being affected by the volume pedal. So as I start to push that down, have a listen, the choir will come in. And as I pull the volume pedal back towards me into the off position, if you notice, the strings stayed on and the choir disappeared. Let's just do that once more. So this is with volume pedal or expression pedal right back, strings only. Here comes the choir. And then pulled it back at the end just to return to strings. Yep, David is making a good point. You can do this on GNOS as well. It just happens we've got the Korg this week. But really, I wanted to show you the principle of why we even need this feature. You just think if you were playing piano and strings, which we could do. Let me just see if I've got a setting on here that will do it. There we go. Let's use this. So, look, this time I've got piano. I've also got strings on and in upper 3, but I can't hear them at the minute, and that's because I've got the volume pedal pulled right back. If I was to slowly introduce the pedal, there come my strings. So we could play just with piano to start with. Now I'm going to start to bring the strings in. Let's go back to piano. Bring the strings back in. Back to piano. So it's a great way of bringing sounds in and out. I'll show you another way you can do it, but it's actually not quite as good in that sort of setting, but works really well in other settings. And yeah, David's saying it does take some practice. I mean, everything I'm doing this afternoon, I am just doing on the fly. So that wasn't perfect. I know that, you know that, but it's just to show you how you can actually go about doing that. So I'm going to jump to the third tab because that's the other one I want to cover, which is range and velocity. Now, if you remember on GNOS, we altered the area in which right 3 was playing. Here they call them upper 1, upper 2, upper 3. And the good news on the Korg is, I know this is only a 61 note. This is the smallest. If you've got the 76 or the 88 note, then this will make a lot more sense because it's a lot more flexible. If you look, the range of each section is shown in columns. It says bottom key C-1. Well, that's sort of way off the end of this keyboard here, and it goes up to G9, which is right up off the top of the keyboard there. In a nutshell, that's telling me that Italian Grand, let's switch the others off, will play across the whole keyboard. Okay, and that's fine. But what if I didn't want it to play across the whole keyboard? Well, what I would do is I would alter, for instance, the top note. Let's say I want the piano to stop there on that F. So I would need to set the top key. I believe that is F5. So Here we go. There you go. So we've told it to play from C-1, which is right off the end. And that's the top note I can play. What do I do up here? Well, I set one of the other sounds to play above there. So maybe I'll put my strings back on. So the bottom note on the strings wants to be the note up from where we stopped the piano. Not the same note, otherwise both sounds will play on that one note. But if you make it the next note up, so the bottom key on that one wants to be F-sharp 5. There we go. So piano, and then on to strings, which are a bit quiet at the minute, but there we go. Now, same rule as we said on the Genos. We're getting a little bit high here. So what I would do is go into the mixer and I would drop the octave of those strings. Let's put that to -12 semitones. And there we go. And this is a good reason this time for leaving the sustain pedal on for the strings, because you can do lovely things like this. And by pressing the sustain pedal, I can hold that. And what I'm actually doing there is I'm crossing the split point. So my bottom note is a piano and my top note is strings. You can create some fantastic effects. So yeah, going against what I said earlier, there's a great example where you might want the sustain pedal on the strings because it can actually hold that note on for you. Think when you get to the end of a piece, so we're playing away on the piano. Strings are still playing, and release, and everything comes off. So you can actually be playing more notes than you've got fingers, which is brilliant. We all need that from time to time. So that is how we set up. Let's call them zones. And now if I was on a longer keyboard, I could have one sound playing here. I could have one sound playing there and maybe some little bells or something just above it. You can actually set up 2 additional splits on here, and it's just a matter of setting bottom key and top key for every section. The only rule to remember is the one that I gave you. If the piano stops at F5, don't make the strings start on F5, because otherwise on that one note the strings would be playing and the piano. You need to move up a semitone to get your bottom key for the next zone. Okay, let's put this all back as it was. The other thing we can do is velocity. Now, at the moment, the velocity for all of the upper sections is going from 0 to 127. That basically means that whatever velocity I hit the keys at, it will sound. If we put the strings on as well. Do you remember when we used the expression pedal, we were able to phase the strings in slowly? Well, I could sort of do the same here by look at the string column for upper 2 and the bottom velocity. I'm going to set it. Now, you've got to work out what figure works for the way you actually play the keys, whether you've got a light touch or a heavier touch. That figure may vary, and it's a little bit of trial and error, really. to sort it out. But I'm going to start at 90. What does that mean? It means that we'll only get piano unless we hit with a velocity of 90 or greater. Then the strings come in. A little bit loud, but let's turn them down. There we go. So I could be playing on piano. So the strings there would only come in. I think when you're using things like strings and piano, it's better doing it with the expression pedal because those strings gradually come in as sort of little crescendo as they're coming in. But there are other cases where you're better off using this sort of situation. Now, if I just go into my songbook here, I know I've got a setting that will illustrate this for you. Where are we? It's under B. There we go. So this was, I'm going back a long, long time now. Somebody asked me to set up a Bert Kaempfert sound for them. And Bert Kaempfert got that sort of soft vocal sound, but he also uses these brass shots. Now, if you can see what I've got in the screen there, let me just go here. So I've got a male scat voice, and then I've got some other scat voices there. But in upper 3, I've got a brass sound called Brass of Power. The thing is, you can't hear it when I'm playing because I've set that, if you want to have a look in the keyboard ensemble, I've set that only to come in with a velocity of 106 to 127, which means I've got to give the keyboard a little bit heavier touch than I normally would, but that means it's not going to come on accidentally. So I'm not going to play the whole thing, but just a brief bit of it is like this. Here's the brass. Hopefully you can see there how you can, just using the touch on the keyboard, I could bring that brass in exactly when I want it. To try and do that by doing registration changes, you're never going to get it that smooth. You know, the fact that I can do the first note and then the second one in the phrase, bring the brass in, like we just did there. Just vocal. Now, I know you will have heard me do that before, but it's just an excellent example where you would want to go into keyboard ensemble and actually set up some different velocities. Let's see if we can give you one more little example, which I put in here. This is just, let's turn the style off for a second. Just a delicate little church organ. Now I'm going to bring a choir in. It's a brilliant feature, and it's a very, very underused feature. So have a go at it. Don't try and be too ambitious to start with, but just think of something just like that, maybe a little organ sound, and you're going to bring a choir in. And just practice. You will need to find what is the optimum velocity level for you to bring the different sounds in. it just says you're lucky to be able to reach a 10th note. I didn't even know I was, but thanks for that. Yeah. And can you do that on Genos too? Now, I'd love somebody to tell me otherwise, but I haven't found a way on Genos where I can individually set up the velocities for each different voice. So I would dearly love if somebody proves me wrong, but I've searched and searched and tried, and I can't seem to be able to do it. So look, just to recap, because I think we've covered at least 2 or 3 of the questions I've had here. Keyboard on Songbook, first of all, is for deciding which sections are affected by whichever pedals you've got in, and the range and velocity. The range enables you to set up zones for each sound, and the velocity, those sounds will only come in depending on the velocity you've actually set in there. The next time I bring the Korg out, I'm gonna cover the rest of it, including the right hand harmony. So we'll do all that. But yeah, hopefully that's covered a few things there. I will just show you one final little example of how you can use the different ranges, the notes, and this actually came about through setting something up. Excuse me. Setting something up through for a pupil actually this week, and if I just go back into my songbook and I put this together, I think I saved it while he was here. There we go. It's here somewhere. There we go. Spaghetti Western. Okay, so he's learning the good, the bad, and the ugly. And what we actually said was that wouldn't it be great? We've got a whistle. So we've got our little whistle sound here. Wouldn't it be great if we could go to the harmonica? And lo and behold, using the ranges, we can. So let me just visually show you what it says. The whistle goes from F#5, which we knew was there, up to the top of the keyboard. And the harmonica, which is in upper 3, goes from wherever the split on the style is, up to F5, the note before, if you notice again, the whistle comes in. So again, I'm not going to play the whole piece, but just to give you some idea of how effective this can be, goes like this. There we go. So the reason I went to the second registration is basically to show you that those settings of the split, if you want to call them that, or the range of different sounds, it can be different in all of your 4 settings there. So don't think once you've got a split sound on, you're stuck with it, because as soon as I went to setting number 2, which is guitar and whistle, I've got it back across the whole keyboard. So yeah, just something to bear in mind there. Okay, the other little question just before we go on to Songbook Plus was to do with tempo, and it was basically somebody saying, when you listen to a piece of music, how do you know what tempo? Well, we have sort of covered this before, but let me see if I can just grab my phone. I'm going to just choose a style on here. and I'm going to go into ballad. And there's one called 70s Ballad, which actually is it's a great style for the song from the 70s by Bread called Make It With You. Now, if I just go on to YouTube and let's go here, and I'm just going to do a search for Make It With You. There we go, by Bread. Now, I don't know how clearly you can hear that, but that's actually playing there. I'm just going to pause it a second. All you need to do is count in tempo in your head with that, and you use the tap tempo button to find out what tempo the original was. So let me just play it again. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I now know that the original record was 82 beats per minute. And if I now start to play it, so I now know that I've got exactly the same tempo as the original, and I could now lock that in as a songbook entry on here. So all you need to do is either have the piece of music playing on a CD, YouTube, on a USB stick if you've got an MP3 file, and you just need to tap in time to the actual music, and that will actually set the tempo for you. So we're on 82. Just for argument's sake, let me just imagine I'm listening to something much quicker. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's telling me that's 112 beats per minute. Now, how could I very quickly get back to the original tempo for that style? Because I'm sure you realise when you choose any internal style, it has a default tempo set to it. Well, I happen to know, I think it's around 88, something like that for 70s Ballad. The easy way to put this back exactly as it should be is to hit the tempo plus and minus buttons together. There you go, what a brain. 88 beats per minute, and it's come back up. Now, we found out that the original was actually a little bit slower than that, but you know, really, there is no right or wrong tempo. It depends what you're comfortable with and what actually sounds right to you. Okay, so that's just a little bit about tap tempo or touch tempo, which is also on the GNOS as well, and just resetting. So let me just show you. If I go into, for instance, jazz, and I go to Jazz Cha-Cha, the default tempo for that is 1-3-7. If I'd been playing something a bit quicker or a bit slower, and I just want to go back to its original tempo, yes, I can reselect that style, but it's actually quicker to just press the plus and minus buttons and the tempo resets itself. Okay, for the last bit of today, just grab a very quick drink. There we go. We're going to look at this bit of software that I was talking about last week called Songbook Plus. Now, Songbook Plus isn't the only software that will do this. It just happens to be my go-to piece of software. So what is it? Basically, it's a sheet music library. And if I... let me just close this down. There we go. So I'm going to try and just put the other screen on for a second. So you can now see on the left-hand side the screen of my iPad. And there is a lot of sheet music, all in alphabetical order. So you know, when I used to go out playing, or you go round to somebody's house, instead of having to take piles of music with you, sometimes, you know, bags full of music books, because you want one piece out of one book and one piece out of something else. Here, this is perfect because I've got all my favourite songs here. To open one up, you simply tap it, and there comes the piece of music. Now, I can see briefly when I first put that on that there's multiple pages, and I can just swipe to one side, which is much easier than turning a page over. So that's fabulous. Look, we've got multiple pages here. What you can also do is use a device like this, which is called a Bluetooth page turner. And if I just switch that on, basically we've got two pedals. If I press the pedal on the right, if you watch the screen, it turns the page automatically for me. Now, I'm doing it with my hands so I can show you, but obviously you would have this on the floor underneath the keyboard. What if the music asked me to go back to the previous page? Well, that's no problem, because you just press the left button and you can go back even right to the beginning. You can even hold the pedal and it will scroll through multiple pages, but you've got to be quick and clever to catch it to stop at the right page. But basically, that's what this device does. It's a Bluetooth page turner, page turnover, and it's brilliant because I can just not even have to take my hand off to swipe across the screen, although that is, like I said, much easier than doing that. Now, that particular one cost me around £50. Having said that, I know you can buy them for about £20-25, and they work. So I can close this music down, just press the little cross, and it takes me straight back to my list of songs. Now, I'm going to show you something very special that we can do with this in a second, but how would we put new songs in there? Well, there's a few ways we can do it. I'm just dragging my iPad down. I know you can see both iPads, but if you watch the main screen of it. So I want to put a new song in here. There is a little menu at the top with 3 dots, and if I press that, there is a little option down here called Photo to PDF. And if I press that, basically now it says, do you want to create a new photo? Now you can actually use your iPad or your Android device to actually take a photo of each page of your music, and it will fill it up here. Or if you've already taken the photos, you can select existing photo, and I've got some already in my photos here. So there's page 1 and there's page 2. So I've put Oxygen by Jean-Michel Jarre, 2 pages, page 1, page 2. That's fine. All you need to do now is give it the name, because by default it will say photo.pdf. I need to just type in Oxygen, I think that's how you spell it. You must leave the .pdf at the end of it, and you press save. Now, if you go searching under O, trust me, it's not there. Okay. But if we go up right up to the top, it's gone into my unused files. In other words, I haven't actually stored it in alphabetical order, but it's there, oxygen.pdf. I can open it from there just to check everything's okay, and it is. I've got my 2 pages. So if I close that down again, how do I get it down into alphabetical order? Very easy. Up in the right-hand corner, you press Edit. And now there's a little green plus sign next to my unused files, and I'm just going to tap where Oxygen is. Now, I can add some more information. If you really want to, you can put the artist, what genre it is. You can add sound files, MIDI files, or even a video file to come on when you select this song. You can tell it the key. You can tell it the tempo that you would normally play it at. I'm not going to do all that for now. I'm just going to leave the title as is and press save. Then press done. And there we go. Now look, it's disappeared from the top. And where has it gone? It's magically gone down under O, oxygen, and it's there. Okay, so that's how you can put a piece of music in. I'm just going to go into my Dropbox folder for a second. Look, I've got some books in here. Jazz Fake book. Let's just choose something. Choose this page. Is it going to load? Yeah. Okay. So it happens to have 2 songs on there. But what I could do is basically just make that full screen, and I can actually check out. I'm reading the comments now. Somebody's put check out. I can actually take a screenshot of that. Now, to do that, I need to turn my iPad the other way up. There we go. And I just press 2 buttons on the iPad, and it's actually taken a little photo, and that will then store. There we go. I'm doing this upside down. Save to photos. Done. And that's gone into my photos file, and now I can actually add it as I want to. So let me put this all back. Sorry, I'm making you dizzy. I know I am. There we go. So if you've got maybe a book as a PDF already online, you can access it, and you can just take a screenshot of it, and you get a perfect image of each page. The only little tip I'm going to give you, if you're photographing something which, let's for argument's sake, is 4 pages long, I always photograph the last page first, so that when I actually look in my photos, it actually comes out in the right order to add it. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. When you do it, you'll actually understand what I'm saying there. So that's brilliant as it is, the fact that you can carry your whole music library, and obviously you can tailor that list to suit yourself. You can find scores that are of the right playing standard for yourself at all. Yeah, Mobile Sheets, David's just saying, Mobile Sheets runs a similar system to this. There's one called iGigbook for Apple. There's a lot of them. There is a lot of them available. When choosing, you need to find one that enables you to put a code in. Now, why do we want a code? Can you see on my list of music, in brackets next to it is a 4-digit code? What does that mean? Well, actually, on its own, it doesn't mean anything. But if I go to edit a file, there is actually, where we saw the title and we could put all the other things in, up at the top, there is a box that says code. And I always put a 4-digit code in there, for Korg anyway. You do it slightly different with Yamaha. So I'm going to save that. I don't want to alter that. When you create a songbook entry on a Korg, so let me just get one and edit the entry. If you have a look up in the top right-hand corner, it says number. I know it doesn't say code, but you can put a 4-digit. If it was a 0 at the front, it would actually just miss the 0 out. But I always get in the habit of putting the same 4-digit code that I put in on Songbook. Now, when you do that, this is what then happens. Let me just choose any piece of music here, and I tap that. As I tap it, the music opened, and the eagle-eyed amongst you will probably see that the screen changed, and it's given me automatically, without touching anything, my 4 settings for that piece of music. So okay, let me close that piece of music down. There we go. And here's one I found earlier. I haven't played this for a long time, and it's ever such a sweet little piece of music. Hushabye Mountain. It was in the film Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Now that's got a code. As I press that, you should see the score come up. You should also see the screen on the keyboard change. And it has. It's now ready to play. Hushabye Mountain. Okay, I'm not doing the whole thing. Let's just do a couple more. Let's have a look. Games lovers play. Little James last thing. It's changed automatically. I've got my 4 settings. It's sort of magic, really, because not only has my score come up, I haven't got to go searching for my registrations because we've linked that piece of music with that songbook entry just via a code there. So I can now start to play this. Close that down and let's scroll through. Let's try Lady in Red and we're ready to play. It's giving me an intro which I didn't want actually, but how quick is that to go from one tune to the other? So yeah, I know for a fact that Mobile Sheets also enables you to put a code on. If you're using a Genos 2, you can do exactly the same thing, but you don't need a code when on, well, certainly in the case of Songbook Plus, it gives you an option to link to registration. So what you do is you have the registrations for a particular piece loaded into the Genos or the Genos 2, and when you go to edit, you just now link song, and that will link the two together. Maybe next time I've got the Genos on, I'll show you exactly how to do it. There is something nice as well, is that if you were scrolling through your keyboard here, what shall we have? Let's go here, and maybe this one. Look what happens when I press it there. It works the other way round. It's actually brought the piece of music up. So let's try another one that I know is there. Love is Blue, I think, is there. So we tap that, and lo and behold, it works that way round as well. And again, you're ready to play. So I don't want the intro, so we'll switch that off. I'll just use a short one. Let's try another one. Let's try it this way round again. I'm going to go to Once Upon a Time in the West. And it's there. It's ready. It's instant. There we go. So yeah, it's fantastic. You know, I can just go through if I want to play Parisian Walkways. Sorry, the score's a little bit dark. It's an old photocopied one, and it faded. But again, just to prove the point, something totally different. And so on. You can just keep going through. Look, we've got all these settings in here. I just saw slightly out of tune. That's fairly appropriate for me at times. There you go. Stranger on the Shore. Tap it, and away we go. I don't happen to play it in that key, but at least you can see the copies there. I think that's a brilliant concept, and you can all do it. It's not difficult to do. Probably the hardest bit to do is get some nice photos in the first place, but with a little bit of practice. And when you actually take the photo using the app itself, it enables you to crop and sort of realign the image as well. So it is pretty foolproof. And to give you some idea, I don't know what the cost of mobile sheets is. I think it's a little bit cheaper, but something like Songbook Plus, you can pay something like £18-19 per year for a full license, or you can pay £40-something for like a lifetime license on it. But I just think it's superb to be able to just go, press that, up comes my score, up comes my registrations, and I'm ready to play. And there you go. So that's a little bit about Songbook Plus. David's asking us, I assume your Songbook works with both Korg and Genos. Songbook Plus does, but this Songbook that I'm playing from at the minute is specifically for Korg. I will just show you. If I press the little cog here, current data folder, so you can have multiple songbooks in there. So if I was to press that and I went to Genos, for example, select that, it would ask me to restart the app because we've changed the songbook. But now it looks the same, but actually it's not, because we now haven't got the code. It's linked to a particular song, and they're a different selection of songs because, of course, different keyboards have different styles, and therefore it triggers different songs that you want to play. So yes, you can have multiple songbooks. Now, I do multiple songbooks for different instruments. Let me just put it back on the. You probably noticed this is my old one from when I had a Pa5x. So some of the sounds are not perfect on here, but it's good enough to sort of show you there. What you could do if you've only got the Korg or you've only got the Genos, you could have multiple songbooks for different styles of music. So you could have a ballad songbook, you could have a jazz and swing, you could have a pop songbook. You know, I mean, I've got a mixture of everything in here, but it might make sense. You know, if any of you go out entertaining, do you remember on the Genos last week we looked at making a playlist up? But you know, we can literally make a sort of playlist here, because you could make a songbook up for a gig that you're going to do, and every song you want is there on the gig. So not a problem. There's lots and lots of different ways you can use it. If you only use it as a sheet music library, it's fantastic, because I think we started to say this last week. It's so frustrating when you want to play a piece, you know you've got it, you can't think which book it's in, and then you go and get the book, and these real big thick books that you have, you know, you turn a page, and how many times have you seen it slowly start to close again, and we end up with our head round in, you know, trying to read the music and keep sort of turning the page. You're not going to get that with this, and you can add new stuff all the time. Yeah, Edson's asking, can you make annotations on the sheet music? Yes, you can. On an iPad, and I presume it's the same on Android, you can actually use well, in this case, an Apple Pencil, and I can write things on. I may have an example. Let me have a look. I think I was scribbling something on the other day. There you go. Look, I've just used the pencil just to put some additional chords in there. So yeah, you can do all that. You can use sort of highlighters to mark things up. You can do all sorts of things. You can actually type chords in and drag them in, so you get proper printed. But I was just sitting working some stuff out on that there. So yeah, I hope you found that interesting. And I would highly recommend you have a look into that sort of thing. I would also say to you, try and put at least a damper. If you can, if you have got access to an expression pedal, it's really, really important. Now, just one final thing before we finish today's session. Just a little advert for next Friday. I've got my dear friend Andy with me next week. Let's just put you back on the other screen because we don't need the iPad now. Yeah, we've got Andy with us next week, and it's more about some hints and tips on playing. So it's not necessarily instrument related. But yeah, we'll be giving you some nice little things to try. So please, I'd love you to join us for that. Barry's just asked a question, is this only available on Apple? No, there are programs. I use Apple purely because for music applications, Apple, they are the people. Yes, I know people will argue it's more expensive, but yes, it works. There are plenty of programs available for Android. Mobile Sheets, which was mentioned early, is one of them. So, yeah, have a look at those. I'm sorry I'm not too au fait with the Android system, but the one thing I forgot to mention, you will need something like this if you want to connect your iPad to the Pa5x. Now, on Genos, it has its own little Wi-Fi system, and using Songbook, you can actually connect wirelessly. I still put a cable in. Why? Because it's more stable. The Wi-Fi is pretty damn good on the Genos, but when you run anything Wi-Fi, it's never as safe as when you put the cable in. This little thing that I'm sort of shaking around in front of the camera is an adapter that changes your charging port into a standard USB connector. Then from there, you put a USB cable into the host port on the back of your instrument. A host port is the square type USB. I know printers have become a thing of the past, really, but it's what I call a printer cable. So it's the standard USB-A, which we all know, going to USB-B, which is the sort of D-shaped one, and that plugs in. So that plugs into your charging port. I've actually got a slightly different one in because I've got one that's also got a charging port, so I can still charge the iPad while I'm actually using Songbook Plus, because when you're using music all the time on it, it can be a little bit of a drain on your battery, to say the least. One final thing before I finish, and this was a question that cropped up just before we came live on air. Somebody said about putting some settings that come on when you switch the keyboard on. Actually, that on Korg is called My Setting. And it's a brilliant little feature because we all have our go-to sound. In my case, if I press My Setting, it is just a piano. Oops, take the style off. Across the whole keyboard. Because I love to just sit and doodle away and play piano. You can set your setting up to introduce a style at a certain tempo and an initial setup. How do you do it? It's dead easy. You set the whole keyboard up as you want it, and you press and hold the My Setting button. This little screen pops up and you press save. And it is as simple as that. Next time you power the keyboard up, and in fact every time you power the keyboard up, your setting, which is actually called My Setting, will come on. So that will be the first sound. So if you want to set it up with a ballad rhythm and a nice string and piano mix at a certain tempo, get the whole thing ready. Make sure you've got the split on and the lower if you want it. Make sure you've got the synchro start on if you want it. Press and hold My Setting and press save. And that will be your go-to power-up sound forever and a day. So, thank you so much for joining us. We've had one thumbs down today, so somebody didn't like it, but hey-ho, not to worry. You can't please them all. That's what they say. I really hope... oh, hang on. Barry's saying, I have done that, but it will not save my settings. Honestly, off the top of my head, Barry, I can't think why, because if I... Well, let me just change mine. Now, My Setting, save, are you sure? Yeah. I don't even need to power off, actually. If I just go to something else... and come back and go to My Setting. Yeah, it's remembered it. It's remembered the split now and the lower. So all I can say is try it again. Make sure you press the save. It won't change these 4 settings here. It will just come up with your one initial setting. You haven't got 4 settings. If you look where it says keyboard set library, it says My Settings. So that's the current one that's selected. But it's still got my settings for Lonely Shepherd, which was the last thing I actually played there. Okay, so yeah, that's, I thought Pa5x had a startup setting. Yeah, but you can change it by using My Setting, and that becomes the startup setting for the instrument. So if I was to switch off now and bring it back on, it would be Movie Ballad at 78 with movie strings on the lower. that would be my my setting there. Okay, once again, thank you so much for joining us. I really hope you've enjoyed that, and we look forward to seeing you next Friday. Oh, Barry, just quickly, yeah, you're looking to change all 4 settings. No, it's just the one setting that gives you a start, and then you obviously work from your songbook there. But we'll cover more of this other weeks, but please join us next week for some really good hints and tips on your playing. Thanks ever so much, and we'll see you all soon. Bye for now.